Australian horror movie Wolf Creek 2, directed by McLean, was first screened at the Venice Film Festival in August 2013, with a general release following in its native Australia on February the 20th, 2014. Coming some 8 years after the original Wolf Creek that was released in 2005, Wolf Creek 2 sees sadistic serial killer Mick Taylor returning to terrorise and murder tourists in the Australian outback. In this episode of Cutting Edge, we'll be looking at the classification of Wolf Creek 2 by the Australian Classification Board, the ACB, and the 2 different cuts of the film that were made available to Australian consumers. Before discussing the sequel, it may be worth summarising the classification issues that surrounded the original Wolf Creek when it was first seen by the ACB. The film was first classified R18+ for theatrical release on August the 25th, 2005, with the consumer advice: high-level violence, coarse language, adult themes. The ACB classifies a film dependent on the so-called impact of several classification issues, these being themes, violence, language, drug use, nudity, and sex. Classification issues that do not extend beyond very mild impact will receive a G rating, signifying general, a film that is suitable for all audiences. Mild impact issues are considered PG and are not recommended for children under 15 without adult guidance. Issues with a moderate impact are rated M, which is suitable for mature audiences over 15. This is an advisory rating, and children under 15 may legally access the material. MA15+ films have strong impact content and are legally restricted to teenagers aged 15 and over. However, under 15s may view such films provided they are in the company of an adult guardian for the duration of the film. Finally, films with an R18+ rating have content that the ACB considers to be high in impact, and such films are restricted to adult audiences only. A further category exists that is reserved purely for pornographic films, X18+, although such films are only available in specific regions of Australia, namely the Australian Capital Territory and the Northern Territory. With regards to the R18+ classification awarded to Wolf Creek in 2005, the distributor Roadshow Films was not content with the decision and sought a reconsideration of the film's rating from the Classification Review Board, an entity described on the ACB website as
an independent statutory body responsible for reviewing certain decisions of the Classification Board. The Classification Review Board is a different board to the Classification Board, who only meet to review decisions of the Classification Board as needed.
Resultant outcomes for any one film can vary depending on the Classification Review Board's decisions, including, but not limited to, the upholding of a rating issued by the ACB, a more lenient or more restrictive classification being awarded, and the altering or rewording of a film's consumer advice. Any decision made by the Classification Review Board, which operates on a majority-based decision-making process, is a new classification decision that replaces the original ACB classification. Roadshow Films filed an application for review 5 days after Wolf Creek had received its R18+ rating, and the Classification Review Board convened on September the 14th to vote on the validity of the original ACB decision. In a written submission, Roadshow stated that it
feels that the treatment of violence in this film appears stronger than it actually is, simply because it is Australian, and because there is no satisfactory end to the film for an audience wanting the bad guy to get what is coming to him. When you review the film and take into account each individual scene, we believe that it fits into the impact test for an MA15+ film, as material that is no higher than strong.
However, the Classification Review Board upheld the original R18+ decision, citing Wolf Creek's ominous atmosphere and fear factor, along with 9 sequences of violence and threat in the film, which they felt contributed to an adult-only classification. Bad language was also an issue in their determination. In summary, the Classification Review Board stated,
"Cunt and fuck are used frequently. The impact of the coarse language, in the view of the review board, is strong, but when regarded in the context of the film, it has the effect of reinforcing the violence. The review board is of the opinion that the documentary style of this film creates a level of realism, which heightens the impact of the violence. That violence is frequent and in some cases prolonged. Unlike typical horror movies, Wolf Creek does not employ the usual tension-releasing devices, such as exaggerated special effects or comedic relief, nor the stylized approaches to depictions of violence, instead striving for a tone of realism that takes it out of the realm of fantasy. This very realistic tone results in a film of high impact, and the impact of the violence is high. The film is not suitable for minors to view.
As a result, Wolf Creek was reclassified R18+ on September the 17th, 2005, with the amended consumer advice: high-level realistic violence, strong coarse language. Wolf Creek 2 was submitted to the ACB some years later, on August the 8th, 2013, for a theatrical certification, again by Roadshow Films. After 18 days, it was awarded with an R18+ rating as per its predecessor for high-impact violence. 3 scenes in the film were cited as being the strongest, these being Mick's killing of the 2 policemen near the start of the film, Rutger's murder and the subsequent dismemberment of his body, and the removal of Paul's fingers with a circular saw. Defending its decision, the ACB stated in their classification file that,
in the board's view, this film warrants an R18+ classification, as it contains material that is unsuitable for a minor to see. The classifiable element is violence that is high in viewing impact. It is episodic and realistic, resulting in copious, realistic blood and gore effects, and includes decapitation and dismemberment. Sound effects, i.e. bones breaking, wet blood spatter effects, also adds to the impact of the realistic violent depictions.
Roadshow Films were once again not happy with the R18+ rating, especially because they had wanted an MA15+ rating for the original film. As a result, Wolf Creek 2 was resubmitted to the ACB for a new classification on December the 4th, 2013, in a pre-cut, modified version that reduced the goriest violence from 4 sequences. Let's examine the differences between the original uncut version and the modified version of Wolf Creek 2 submitted to the ACB for classification. The first sequence that was cut for the Australian theatrical release was the pre-title sequence that features Mick's revenge killing of the 2 policemen who pull him over on the road. In the original uncut version, the scene plays as follows.
What a redneck moron.
Shot.
Well, where the bloody hell do you think you're going?
You're crazy, are you? You got my leg. I think it's broken. Shut up, you big crybaby.
That'll do, pig.
What do you think you're fucking doing?
No, your little mate's right. I am a pig shooter. You know what I do to pigs that won't stop squealing? I make them stop. Fuck me. You stupid pair of bastards. What a fucking mess you made, huh? Now I've got to clean it up.
They'll fucking find us. They'll find the fucking car, and then they'll... I want to see my kids. What? Mate, mate, I can make the ticket go away, mate.
Or I could make you go away.
In the modified version, the explicit sight of the younger policeman's bloody neck stump was heavily reduced, along with a reduction in the sight of Mick stabbing the older policeman and setting him on fire. Some dialogue was also cut in the sequence for continuity, with the modified MA15 Plus version playing as follows.
What a redneck moron. Well, where the bloody hell do you think you're going?
You're crazy, are you? You had my leg. I think it's broken. Shut up, you big crybaby.
That'll do, pig.
What do you think you're fucking doing?
No, your little mate's right. I am a pig shooter. You know what I do to pigs that won't stop squealing? I make them stop.
I can make the ticket go away, mate.
Or I can make you go away.
Rutger's death was the second sequence that was reduced before a resubmission to the ACB. We have edited the offending footage for clarity, with the original uncut version containing the following material.
Shit. Now he's tougher than a pig. You crawling off to through line? Non-smoker. Got this crowd now, huh? Jesus. Woodcut. You part bloody donkey. Hey? Who's a lucky girl then? That'll make your eyes water, wouldn't it? This little piggy, here's his snout. Split him open and his guts fall out. Fucking head out of the road. Yeah. Dog's all right, man. Oh, you mongrel bastard. Oh, Jesus. Come on. Come on. That quickest way to a man's arse through his chest. Hey. Getting through that fucking breastplate, does it? Fucking through. Oh, no. Rip your heart out. There we go.
The modified version heavily reduces this sequence, including the sight of Rutger's head being severed and the subsequent detailed sight of his body being dismembered by Mick.
Shit, now he's tougher than a pig. Non-smoker. Jesus. Woodcut. You part bloody donkey. Hey? Who's a lucky girl then? That'll make your eyes water, wouldn't it? Here's the little piggy. Here's his snout. Split him open and his guts fall out. Yeah. Dog's all right, man. Mongrel bastard. Oh, Jesus. Come on. Come on. Come on. That quickest way to a man's arse through his chest. Hey. Fucking easy getting through that fucking breastplate, does it? Fucking through that. Oh, no. Rip your heart out.
Several minutes later, the sight of Katerina's dead body was also reduced. Again, here is the uncut version, compared with the modified resubmission.
Are you alright? Oh, shit.
You all right? Oh, shit.
For fuck's sake, Mick.
The last changes made in the modified version concerned the sight of Paul having his fingers severed by the circular saw. In an extended sequence, Mick is playing a sadistic game with Paul, where a wrong answer results in Paul being tortured. For clarity, we have edited the footage, with the offending material in the uncut version playing as follows.
What do you want me to fucking do? Fuck, that's the right fucking action, Mick. Jesus Christ, no, I got two right. Come on, eh? You don't need to fucking do this and go for right. It's the right fucking answer. You know, it's fucking right. Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Oh, no.
The modified version plays thus.
Mick, no. What the fuck, man? That's right. What are you doing, Mick? Fuck, that's the right fucking answer. What do you want me to fucking do? Fuck, fuck, that's the right fucking answer, Mick. Jesus Christ, no, I got two right. Come on, eh? You don't need to fucking do this and go for right. It's the right fucking answer. You know, it's fucking right. Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Oh, no.
After considering the modified version of Wolf Creek 2 for an Australian theatrical release, the ACB noted that the killings of the two policemen and the scene depicting the removal of Paul's fingers were both now less impactful, commenting that,
In the board's opinion, this modified version of the film does not contain any classifiable elements that exceed a strong impact level. Therefore, this film can be accommodated within the MA15+ classification.
The pre-cut modified version of Wolf Creek 2, for which the distributor had removed around 2 minutes of footage in comparison to the uncut version, was classified MA15+ on December the 17th, 2013, for strong bloody violence and coarse language. Nevertheless, posters for the film in Australia continued to advertise the film with an R18+ rating throughout the month of December, before a replacement poster debuted in January 2014 that advertised the new MA15+ cut version. Although heavy cuts were made to secure an MA15+ rating, director Greg McLean was quoted on February the 18th, 2014, 2 days before Wolf Creek 2's theatrical release in Australia, as saying,
I have final cut of the movie, so the movie that's out there is finally my version. Wolf Creek 2 has quite a different tone from the original film.
However, McLean also admitted that the MA15+ version contained some very minor tweaks that had been made to secure its teen-friendly rating. Cutting Edge spoke with Wolf Creek 2 screenwriter Aaron Stearns, who was left bemused by the MA15+ version. His essay, When Henry Met Mick, Misguided Censorship in Australia, was recently published in the ebook VHS Nasty, The Video Nasties, The Essential Guide to Video Nasties, Banned Films and Censorship. Stern's piece discusses in detail the changes that were made to Wolf Creek 2 for the Australian market, with Stearns noting in particular that the effect of Rutger's death in the cut version is completely different from his original intentions. Stern's essay is worth reading in full, but we feel that some of his key points are worth summarising here with his permission.
In the month prior to Wolf Creek 2's release in Australia, it was decided by the film's distributors that the film needed an MA15+ cut to reach a wider audience. The scene of the beheading of Rutger and his subsequent no-holds-barred butchering were reduced. The scene arguably loses some of its power, and certainly no longer has the intended impact of making the audience experience an almost unadulterated depiction of a beheading. Such omissions of the more extreme moments of violence in the film may well have had the intended result of the distributor in strengthening the film's appeal to a broader audience. The film smashed its way into #1 at the box office in its first week, so perhaps the move was justified. However, some horror fans felt the movie lacked some of the confrontational horror of the first Wolf Creek, not knowing the film's intended form until it was eventually released in full on Blu-ray in Australia as a director's cut edition. When cuts are forced on artworks, they change the nature of the film. Scenes which are intentionally non-exploitative, non-salacious, and which force the audience on the back foot with their extreme nature, and which encourage the questioning of the viewer's role in consuming such violence, or are at least integral elements of the storyline, instead become neutered and sanitized. And in doing so, censorship may actually let the audience off the hook.
In 2014, the uncut version of Wolf Creek 2 was submitted for a Blu-ray classification in Australia with an extensive extras package, and was passed with an R18+ rating on May the 1st. This was the version marketed in Australia as a director's cut, although it was merely the originally intended theatrical version of the film. The modified version of the film was also submitted to the ACB for a home video classification on April the 9th, 2014, and the MA15+ rating was upheld on May the 5th. Australian fans wishing to own the uncut version of Wolf Creek 2 can pick up the Director's Cut Blu-ray from Roadshow Entertainment, which carries an R18+ rating. The censored MA15+ version was also released on Blu-ray and on DVD, and both these versions should naturally be avoided. In the United States, the uncut version is available on DVD and Blu-ray as an unrated version from Image Entertainment. Home video versions in the UK also feature the uncut version and carry a BBFC 18 rating for strong bloody violence, gore, sadistic threat, very strong language.